Echoes in the Timberline. Chapter 1. The Silence of Winter. The Timberline always looked different in winter. Eli Ramirez had worked Glacier Pines National Park for more than a decade, but every December when the first heavy snows swallowed the trails, it felt like he was looking at an entirely new landscape. The spruce and fir trees leaned heavy with frost, their boughs sagging like tired shoulders. Silence blanketed the wilderness, broken only by the occasional groan of ice cracking on the river or the startled flight of a raven. He stood at the trailhead with his pack strapped tight and his breath puffing white into the dawn air. The forest beyond was a tangle of shadow and snowdrifts, a white labyrinth that stretched for miles. Somewhere out there was Sarah Whitfield, the park's newest ranger, waiting impatiently. Eli glanced at his watch. 7 minutes late. The rookie didn't understand yet that punctuality was more than a formality out here. It was survival. When she appeared, crunching up the trail in her bright orange parka, Eli resisted the urge to sigh. Sarah was sharp, no doubt about it, book-smart, with a degree in environmental science and a resume filled with research internships, but she stuck out in the backcountry like a painted target. Her face was flushed from the cold, her blonde braids swinging with each step. "You're late," Eli said. Sarah rolled her eyes, pulling her gloves tighter. 7 minutes. The world survived. Eli didn't smile. 7 minutes can be the difference between finding someone alive or frozen solid. Keep that in mind. She muttered something under her breath but let it go. Good. He didn't want to waste time bickering. He handed her a laminated map and pointed to their route. "Boundary Patrol," he said. "Up along Pine Needle Ridge, then cut west toward Hollow Creek. Check for storm damage, downed markers, anything that needs logging. Keep your eyes open for tracks, too. A lot of animals come down this time of year, hungry and desperate." Sarah gave him a mock salute. "Yes, sir." They set off into the forest, their snowshoes biting into the crust. The silence swallowed them quickly, city noise and human chatter falling away until only the whisper of wind remained. Eli felt it settle in his bones like it always did, the calm, the solitude, the weight of being alone in a wilderness that didn't care whether you made it out or not. Sarah tried to fill the silence with chatter at first. She pointed out lichen growth on the trunks, asked questions about snowfall averages, made comments about how the pines looked like something out of a painting. Eli answered in monosyllables. She'd learned soon enough that words drained heat from your body, and in this kind of cold, wasted breath wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. After an hour, Sarah grew quiet, and that's when Eli noticed it. The hush felt heavier than usual. He'd been in enough winters to know what was normal. The occasional scurry of a snowshoe hare, the distant call of a jay, the scratching of squirrels digging for cached food. But today the forest was still, too still. They reached a clearing on the ridge where the wind had swept the snow into curling drifts. From here, the valley below stretched white and endless, the creek a frozen silver ribbon winding between dark clusters of pines. Eli stopped, frowning. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her breath quick. Eli pointed to the snow at the edge of the clearing. Tracks. At first glance, they looked like deer, two-toed impressions, evenly spaced, but the longer Eli studied them, the more wrong they seemed. The stride was too long, the impressions too deep, and the pattern meandered in a way no deer's would, circling back on itself, doubling over the same ground. "Deer," Sarah guessed, "not like any I've seen." She crouched, brushing away powder to get a clearer look. "Maybe an elk." Eli shook his head. "Elk don't come this far up the ridge, and not in this snow." They followed the trail a few yards before it vanished into the trees. The prints ended abruptly, as if whatever made them had simply vanished. Eli felt a prickle crawl up the back of his neck. Sarah frowned. That doesn't make sense. Animals don't just stop. Not usually. Eli's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but protocol kept him moving. They logged the anomaly, sketched the prints, marked the GPS coordinates. The whole time he kept glancing into the trees, half expecting to see something watching. By midday they reached Hollow Creek. The ice had split in jagged veins across the surface, black water bubbling beneath. The current whispered faintly, muffled by snow. Sarah went ahead to check the old wooden footbridge, its beams sagging with age. "Looks stable enough," she called. Eli didn't answer. His gaze had locked on something caught against the ice near the bank. He moved closer, his gut tightening. It was a deer carcass, or what was left of one. The animal's ribcage was torn open, its hide ragged and stiff with frost. Most of the meat was gone, stripped clean. But it wasn't wolves. Wolves tore, scattered, left prints everywhere. This was different. The bones looked gnawed, scraped down with a precision that felt almost human. Sarah joined him, gagging at the sight. Jesus, what could have done that? Could be a cougar, Eli said automatically, though he didn't believe it. Cougars were surgical, yes, but not like this. And cougars didn't usually take down full-grown deer in the dead of winter when prey was scarce. Sarah crouched, studying the ribs. Whatever it was starving. Eli felt the prickle again, worse this time. The forest pressed in around them, the trees crowding close like dark sentinels. He scanned the tree line, every shadow a threat. "Let's move," he said gruffly. They made camp on the ridge before dusk, pitching their small tent beneath a cluster of firs. Sarah busied herself with the stove, melting snow for tea, while Eli collected firewood. The air grew colder by the minute, the kind of cold that burned exposed skin. The sun bled red through the trees before sinking into indigo. Eli sat close to the fire, listening. Still no birds, no rustle of movement, no life at all. Just the wind sighing through the pines. Sarah finally broke the silence. "You ever see anything like that before? The deer?" Eli stared into the flames. Memories tugged at him, memories he didn't want to share. Faces on missing person posters. Search parties that found nothing but torn fabric. Stories whispered by locals about things in the woods. "Sometimes," he said, "things go hungry out here. They'll do what they have to." Sarah sipped her tea. "Doesn't explain those tracks." "No," Eli admitted. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling upward. For a long while they didn't speak. Then, faintly, from deep in the trees, came a sound. At first Eli thought it was the wind, but it grew clearer. A low, keening wail, somewhere between a scream and a moan. It rose and fell, stretched thin by distance, too unnatural to be an animal he recognized. Sarah froze, mug halfway to her lips. What the hell was that? Eli didn't answer. He reached for his rifle instead. The sound came again, closer this time. Long, hungry, wrong. Sarah's eyes widened, her face pale in the firelight. That wasn't a cougar, was it? Eli chambered around, his hands steady though his pulse thundered. He'd heard stories. Around campfires in whispered voices, old hunters muttering when they thought rangers weren't listening. Tales of something that lived in these woods, something that walked like a man but hungered like a beast. He'd never believed them. Not until now. Chapter 2. Ashes of the Missing. Morning came pale and brittle, sunlight filtering through frosted branches like weak glass. Eli woke to the sound of Sarah stirring in her sleeping bag, muttering curses as she tried to force warmth back into her limbs. Their breath clung to the tent fabric in crystalline frost, tiny constellations of ice spreading across the nylon. God, how do people do this for fun? Sarah groaned, shoving herself upright. I swear I lost a toe last night. Eli pulled on his boots without answering. His joints ached from the cold, but that wasn't what had kept him awake. It was the sound, the long, hollow cry that had floated through the forest before dying into silence. He hadn't heard it again, but his nerves stayed coiled tight. By the time they broke camp, the sun had climbed high enough to paint the snow blinding white. Their route angled downhill toward Ranger Station Echo 2, a weathered cabin half buried in drifts. The radio antenna stabbed above the treetops like a crooked spear. Eli unlocked the door, the hinges groaning. Inside smelled of dust, kerosene, and the faint tang of mice. He flicked on the propane heater, and the chill reluctantly receded. Sarah rubbed her hands together over the vent. "This is luxury compared to that tent," she said, exhaling steam. Eli didn't respond. He crossed to the desk, where a stack of incident reports waited. Winter was usually slow, broken signage, fallen trees, the occasional reckless snowshoer, but the top file bore a red marker slash. Priority. He opened it. Missing hiker. Name, Daniel Kearns. Age, 34. Last seen 2 weeks ago. Vehicle found at Timberline trailhead. No sign of exit. Eli scanned the notes. Search teams had gone out for 3 days before the storm buried the ridge. No tracks, no clothing, no body. Just gone. His chest tightened. Sarah noticed his expression. Bad news? He slid the file toward her. She skimmed it quickly, brows knitting. Another one? Yeah. She looked up. How many does that make? Eli didn't answer immediately. He'd stopped keeping track. But the truth pressed heavy on him. Too many. More than they could explain with avalanches or hypothermia. And always the same stretch of wilderness, the Timberline ridges, the same valley where tracks ended and deer were found half-eaten. Sarah leaned back in the chair. You knew about this? I knew he was missing. Didn't know they'd closed the case this quick. Closed? He's not found. They wait until weather clears. Then they file it under natural hazard. Happens all the time. Sarah's jaw tightened. That doesn't sound like closure. It's not, Eli admitted. The radio crackled suddenly, making them both jump. A thin, distorted voice pushed through the static. Echo 2, this is base. Come in. Eli grabbed the mic. Echo 2 here. Got another call from Kearns' sister, the dispatcher said. She's demanding updates. You're nearest the ridge. Patrol again today. See if the storm uncovered anything. Eli's gut twisted. Copy that. Static swallowed the line. Sarah exhaled, shaking her head. How do you live with that? People just vanishing? Eli didn't answer right away. He remembered a different name, a different file. Aaron Bledsoe. 19 years old, went backpacking with friends, wandered off one night near Hollow Creek. They'd found nothing but his scarf snagged on a branch. Eli had been part of that search. He still remembered the look on the boy's mother's face when they told her the truth. You don't live with it, he said finally. You just keep working. They left the cabin and followed the ridge east, snow crunching under their boots. Sarah was quieter today, her usual spark dimmed by the weight of the missing hiker file. Eli didn't mind. The silence made it easier to listen. By midday, they reached a slope where the storm had scoured away drifts. Black branches poked through like skeletal fingers. Eli spotted something dark, half buried near a fallen log. He held up a hand. Sarah followed his gaze. Is that? They hurried forward. It was a backpack, straps frayed, zipper torn. Snow clung to the fabric, but the name patch was still visible. Kearns. Sarah's eyes lit with hope. Maybe he's close. Eli crouched, studying the ground. The pack looked dropped, not carefully set down. And there were marks in the snow, not footprints exactly, but deep furrows, as if something had been dragged. They led a few yards, then stopped abruptly in a churn of ice. No continuation. Sarah bent low, brushing the snow with gloved hands. Tracks? Not any I know. Eli's stomach sank. It was the same as yesterday. Signs that something had moved, then nothing, like the forest had swallowed it whole. Sarah pulled open the backpack. Inside were half-frozen granola bars, a water bottle, a map spotted with moisture. No blood, no ripped clothing. Just abandoned. She looked up, her breath fast. So where the hell is he? Eli scanned the tree line. Every shadow felt alive, every gust of wind a whisper. He thought of the deer carcass, the unnatural cry in the night. And he thought of stories told by locals who lived near the park, stories he'd always dismissed. Something about hunger, something about men turning into monsters in the deep woods. Sarah must have read something in his face, because she asked, "What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing," he said too quickly. Bullshit. Eli zipped the pack shut and slung it over his shoulder. "We'll log this, bring it back to base. That's all we can do." But as they turned back toward the trail, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. Patient. Waiting. Night came faster than expected. They set up camp lower on the ridge, the forest crowding close. Sarah kept glancing into the trees, jumpy at every sound. Eli couldn't blame her. Even the wind seemed strange tonight, carrying faint echoes like voices half heard. As they sat by the fire, Sarah broke the silence. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" she asked softly. Eli stared into the flames. He didn't want to answer. Didn't want to dredge up Aaron Bledsoe, or the others. Didn't want to speak the stories that old hunters whispered about. The thing that walked in winter, the thing that ate and was never full. But Sarah's eyes held steady, waiting. Finally he said, "Yeah, I've seen it." Her breath caught. "Then what is it?" Eli didn't reply, because if he said the word, if he named it, he feared it might hear him. Chapter 3. Signs in the Snow. The storm hit during the night. Eli woke to the wind battering the tent walls like fists. Snow hissed across the ridge, burying the world in a whiteout. By dawn, drifts pressed up against the nylon, and the fire pit was gone without a trace. Sarah groaned, tugging at the zipper of her sleeping bag. "We're not hiking in that, are we?" Eli peered out through the flap. The air was thick with falling snow, the trees blurred shapes in a swirling void. He'd seen worse, but Sarah hadn't. "We waited out," he said. "Storm like this will pass by afternoon." "Great. Stuck in a tent with you for hours." Despite her sarcasm, Eli caught the tightness in her tone. She was trying to mask nerves. He'd seen it before. Rookies laughing too loud, joking too much when the wilderness pressed in. They killed time with reports, logging the details of Kern's backpack, marking coordinates on the map. By noon, the snowfall thinned, the wind dropping into tired sighs. Eli broke camp quickly, anxious to move. The forest felt different after a storm, scrubbed clean, reborn. But it also erased. Trails vanished, tracks vanished. It was like the world had swallowed yesterday whole. They trudged west along the ridge, the snow muffling every step. Hours passed in silence, then Sarah stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "Look!" Eli followed her gaze. Downslope, half hidden by trees. Something dark marred the snow. They descended carefully, branches snagging their coats. It was another carcass. Not a deer this time, a fox. The small body lay twisted, ribs cracked open. The head was missing, torn clean away. Blood had seeped into the snow, a black stain against white. Sarah swore softly. What the hell is doing this? Eli crouched. No prints led in or out, just the fox, broken and empty. He felt the same chill from the creek, the same crawling sense of wrongness. This isn't normal, Sarah whispered. No, Eli thought, but he didn't say it aloud. By late afternoon, they reached the valley floor where Hollow Creek curved south. Here the forest grew denser, branches knitting overhead into a dark canopy. The air smelled of wet bark and iron. It was there they found Cal Dunn, or rather, he found them. Ramirez! The voice came rough and booming, startling Sarah into a stumble. A tall figure emerged from the trees, snow clinging to his heavy coat. Cal carried a rifle slung over one shoulder, his beard thick and white as frost. His eyes, sharp and gray, missed nothing. Eli felt tension ease just slightly. Cal. The old hunter clapped him on the shoulder. Heard they had you chasing ghosts again. His gaze flicked to Sarah. And who's this? Sarah Whitfield, she said quickly, extending a gloved hand. Ranger. Cal grinned, ignoring her hand. Book smart, huh? You'll learn more in a week out here than in 4 years at school. Sarah bristled, but Eli cut in. We found signs, Cal. Tracks that don't lead anywhere. Carcasses torn open. Cal's grin faded, his eyes hardened. Where? Hollow Creek, 2 days ago, and again today. The old man cursed under his breath. Should have known. Storm wakes it up. Sarah frowned. It? Cal looked at her long, then back at Eli. You didn't tell her? She doesn't need campfire stories, Eli said flatly. Sarah crossed her arms. Try me. Cal studied her like he was weighing something, then shrugged. Suit yourself. He crouched, drawing a shape in the snow with a stick. Long tracks, clawed toes, a stride that stretched wider than a man's. Hungry thing, Cal said. Older than these trees. My grandfather told me about it. Said it shows up in the lean times, when the storms hit and the game's gone. Said it takes people, eats them. And the worst part? Every person it eats, it gets hungrier. Sarah let out a short, incredulous laugh. So what? You're saying there's a monster in the woods, a fairy tale? Cal's gaze snapped to her, sharp as a blade. You seen the bodies yet? Seen the way they're open like cans, bones gnawed down, that look like fairy tales to you? Sarah faltered. Could be a cougar, or a bear. In this snow, Cal spat. Cougars hole up in weather like this. Bears are asleep. You know damn well it ain't them. Eli shifted uncomfortably. He hated when Cal spoke like this in front of rookies, planting fear where logic should be. But part of him couldn't dismiss the old man so easily. Not after the tracks, not after that cry in the night. Sarah shook her head. There has to be an explanation, a rational one. Cal leaned close, his voice low. There is, just not one you'll find in your textbooks. Eli cut in before the argument could escalate. We're heading back to Echo 2 before dark. You coming? Cal hesitated, then shook his head. Got traps to check. But listen, Ramirez, you keep your eyes open tonight. And if you hear it again... His voice dropped to a rasp. Don't answer. The old man turned and disappeared into the trees, silent as smoke. Sarah let out a breath she'd been holding. That guy is insane. Maybe, Eli said. But his gut told him otherwise. They made camp along the creek, the sky bruised purple with dusk. Sarah built the fire high, throwing nervous glances at the trees. Eli cleaned his rifle, movements slow, deliberate. When the forest finally fell dark, the sounds began. First a cracking branch, then a rustle too heavy for a rabbit, then silence long and deep, pressing against their ears. Sarah whispered, "It's just animals." Eli didn't reply, because somewhere beyond the firelight, just at the edge of hearing, came a voice. A man's voice. "Help!" Sarah's eyes went wide. "Did you hear that?" Eli's chest tightened. The voice came again, closer. "Please, help me." Sarah scrambled to her feet. "It could be Kearns." Eli grabbed her arm hard. "No." She jerked against his grip. "What do you mean, no? Someone's out there." Eli's face was stone. "That's not a man." The voice drifted again, stretching thin, echoing wrong. "Help! So cold." Sarah looked at him in horror. "Then what is it?" Eli's hand tightened on the rifle. Wendigo. Chapter 4. Firelight Confessions. The voice in the dark faded, swallowed by the trees. Sarah sat rigid, her face pale in the glow of the fire, her eyes darting to the shadows beyond. Eli kept his rifle across his knees, finger hovering near the trigger, every muscle coiled tight. Neither of them spoke for what felt like hours. Finally, Sarah whispered, "You don't really believe that, do you?" Eli didn't answer. The silence between them was answer enough. She shivered, tugging her coat tighter. "Wendigo, that's just folklore. Some Algonquin legend about greed and cannibalism. It's not real." The forest seemed to listen. The flames popped. Somewhere, far away, came the low creak of shifting branches. Eli's jaw tightened. Folklore has to start somewhere. The night dragged on, long and cruel. Every gust of wind sounded like a moan. Every snapping twig set nerves screaming. Sarah barely slept. Eli didn't at all. By dawn, the storm had cleared, leaving the forest crisp and brittle under a blue sky. They packed quickly, neither speaking much, and started north toward Echo 2. The silence between them was heavier than the snow. They hadn't gone a mile when a figure stepped out of the trees ahead. Sarah gasped, then relaxed when she saw the beard, the rifle, the long coat. Cal Dunn. He stood with his weight balanced, eyes scanning the forest behind them as if expecting pursuit. His face was grim. "You heard it," he said. Not a question. Eli nodded once. Sarah let out a sharp laugh, brittle as ice. "You mean that thing?" "Yeah, we heard it. It was someone calling for help." Cal's gaze snapped to her. "That wasn't a man." Sarah threw her hands up. "Why does everyone keep saying that? It sounded human." "That's how it works." Cal's voice was flat. "It mimics, lures you, gets you to follow. Once you do, you don't come back." Sarah stared, incredulous. "You can't honestly expect me to buy this? Monsters in the woods. Really?" Cal ignored her, looking at Eli instead. "You tell her yet?" Eli shook his head. "Then she deserves to know." They made camp early that night, too rattled to keep moving in the dark. The fire snapped high, throwing gold across the snow. Cal sat close, shadows carving deep lines into his weathered face. He pulled a flask from his coat, took a long drink, and began. "My grandfather came from the North Woods," he said slowly. "Back before this was all parkland. Folks lived harder back then. Winters could strip the meat off your bones if you weren't ready. He said once, one year, when the snow never seemed to end, men started disappearing. Hunters, trappers, even whole families. People blamed wolves, blamed starvation. but the bodies they found told a different story. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. What kind of story? Cal's eyes gleamed in the firelight. They weren't just dead. They were hollowed, ribs split, bones gnawed, like something was eating them, piece by piece. And sometimes there weren't bodies at all, just tracks that went on until they stopped, like the ground swallowed them whole. Sarah hugged her knees tighter. That doesn't prove anything. Cal leaned forward. Then he saw it. Said it walked like a man, tall and thin, skin stretched tight over its bones, eyes burning like coals. And the hunger, he swore he could feel it in the air, like it wanted to eat everything that breathed. The fire cracked. Sarah's face flickered between skepticism and unease. Your grandfather was probably... He wasn't drunk, if that's what you're thinking. Cal's voice cut sharp. He wasn't a fool either. He said once a man tastes human flesh out here, once he gives in to hunger that deep, he ain't a man no more. That hunger sticks, twists you, turns you into something that ain't never full again. That's the Wendigo. Sarah scoffed weakly, but it sounded forced. So you're saying there are cannibal monsters out here? That's the explanation? Eli spoke for the first time. You think Kearns just walked off the ridge in a storm and vanished? Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it again. Cal's eyes stayed fixed on the fire. The old stories say fire keeps it back. Sometimes, but not for long. When it's hungry enough, nothing will. For a long moment, the three of them sat in silence, the fire's warmth the only comfort against the endless dark pressing in. Then, from somewhere in the distance, came a sound. A howl, not wolf, not cougar. Something longer, hungrier. Sarah froze. Eli's grip tightened on his rifle. Cal didn't move, his face grim as stone. It's close, he whispered. The howl came again, closer this time, echoing through the timberline like a promise. Sarah's hands shook. We can't stay here. Eli's gut twisted. He knew she was right, but there was nowhere safer in the valley, nowhere fire and steel could hold out forever. Cal stared into the darkness, voice low. It's hunting. And in the silence that followed, Eli realized he could hear it, faintly, just at the edge of hearing. Breathing. Not theirs. Something else. Something in the trees. Chapter 5. The Hollow Hunger. The breathing in the trees grew louder, ragged, wet. Sarah's face had gone pale in the firelight. Her eyes darted toward the shadows just beyond the glow, and Eli knew she was fighting the same instinct that coiled in his gut, the urge to run. Cal leaned close to the fire, feeding it another branch. Sparks snapped into the night. Keep it burning, he muttered. Don't let it die down. Eli lifted his rifle, barrel aimed into the black between the trees. His finger rested on the trigger, but his chest was tight. He'd fired at wolves, cougars, even the occasional black bear that wandered too close to the campsites. But this... A branch cracked, then another. Slow footsteps circled the clearing, heavy, deliberate, crunching snow with an uneven gait. Sarah clamped a hand over her mouth to stop a gasp. Eli tracked the sound, but the shadows shifted with every flicker of flame, and he couldn't pin down a shape. Cal whispered, It's testing us. The sound came again, closer this time. Then, abruptly, silence. Eli's heart pounded, his ears strained. A low groan slid through the night, long, inhuman. And yet, beneath it, faint words. Cold. Sarah's breath hitched. That's... The thing moved fast. Too fast. A blur of motion at the edge of the firelight. Snow sprayed, and something hit the ground just beyond the circle of warmth with a sickening thud. They all whipped around. A deer carcass lay sprawled in the snow. Fresh, its neck bent at an impossible angle, the eyes still glassy with life that had been snuffed out minutes ago. Blood steamed in the cold, painting the snow black. Sarah gagged. "Oh my God!" Cal swore under his breath. "It's playing with us." Then came the sound. Not the howl, not the groan. Feeding. Wet tearing noises, fibers snapping, cartilage crunching. Just beyond the dark, something fed on the deer it had thrown, dragging pieces into the shadows with greedy guttural grunts. Eli's stomach twisted, bile rising. He'd seen predators feed, but nothing like this. The sounds were frantic, savage. Bones cracked like twigs. Flesh tore with a slurping rip. Sarah clamped her hands over her ears. "Stop. Please make it stop." But the feeding didn't stop. It grew louder, as if whatever it was wanted them to hear, wanted them to know. Then, suddenly, silence again. Snow fell lightly, whispering against the fire's crackle. Eli swallowed hard, his voice a rasp. "It's gone." But Cal's face said otherwise. He wasn't looking at the tree line. He was looking up. "Ramirez," he hissed. Eli followed his gaze. Something clung to the trunk of a fir just beyond the firelight, 20 feet up. Too long, too thin. Its limbs bent wrong, jointed like broken branches. The skin was gray, stretched taut over bones. And the head. Eli's breath froze. The skull was deer-like but shattered, antlers jagged and uneven, one snapped halfway down. Its mouth stretched wide, far wider than it should, teeth thin and needle-sharp. Blood glistened down its chin, steaming in the cold. Sarah saw it and screamed. The thing moved. It launched from the tree, landing just outside the fire's glow with a bone-jarring thud. The snow shuddered. Its eyes burned faintly red, catching the light. Eli fired. The rifle's crack shattered the night. The creature shrieked, a piercing metallic sound that tore at his ears. It lurched back, but the firelight seemed to hold it at bay. Cal was on his feet, shouting, "Keep it back! Keep the fire high!" Sarah scrambled for more wood, shoving branches into the flames. Sparks roared upward, light pushing against the dark. The thing hissed, retreating just far enough to vanish into the tree line again. Silence. Only their ragged breathing filled the clearing. Eli's hands shook on the rifle. What the hell was that? Cal's face was pale, drawn tight. "You know what it was." Sarah's voice cracked. "It's real. Oh God, it's real." From the trees came a sound that made Eli's blood run cold. A laugh. High, thin, mocking. The Wendigos' laugh. They didn't sleep that night. Every time the fire sagged, the noises returned. The crunch of footsteps, the wet slurp of feeding, the whispers that sounded like words. By dawn, the snow around their camp was littered with bones. Small ones. Rabbit. Fox. Something had dragged them there, one by one, arranging them like trophies. Sarah broke first. She stood, her voice ragged. "We can't stay here. We can't." Eli caught her arm. "Moving in daylight is safer, but we stay together." Cal nodded grimly. "It'll follow. It always does. But we've got a better chance with sun on our side." They stamped out the fire and packed quickly. The forest was eerily bright in the morning light, the snow glittering like shards of glass. But Eli felt no relief. The trees pressed too close. Every shadow felt thick with hunger. And as they started north, he realized the tracks weren't behind them. They were ahead. Chapter 6. Splintered Bonds. The daylight didn't help. Eli kept his rifle close as they pushed north, but the tracks never fell behind. They lingered ahead of them, twisting between the pines, long gouges in the snow like claws dragged deliberately into the earth. Sarah's breathing was sharp, uneven. She kept looking over her shoulder, then to the side, then to Eli, as though her nerves couldn't choose a direction to settle. "Why is it ahead of us?" she whispered. Cal trudged forward without turning. "Because it wants you to follow, always ahead, always leading." "That doesn't make sense," Sarah's voice cracked. "If it wants us, why doesn't it just take us?" "Because it enjoys the chase." Eli felt the weight of that truth settle in his stomach. The thing wasn't just hunting, it was toying with them, like the deer it had tossed into camp, like the bones it had left behind. It wanted them to know it was close, it wanted them afraid. By noon, the wind had sharpened, carrying a faint copper smell. Eli slowed, nostrils flaring. Sarah noticed. "What is it?" He didn't answer. He already knew. They crested a rise and saw it. The body was nailed to a tree, at least what was left of it. It might have been Daniel Kern's once. The parka was the same deep green as the photo in his missing person file, but the body had been opened from throat to stomach, ribs splayed wide like wings. The head dangled low, hanging by a strip of sinew, the face frozen in a mask of horror. The snow beneath was stained a black-red circle, chunks of meat scattered like offerings. Sarah dropped to her knees and vomited. Eli's stomach twisted, bile burning his throat. He forced it down, eyes fixed on the obscene display. It wasn't just killing, it was art. Arranged, deliberate. Cal spat into the snow. "It's marking territory." Sarah staggered upright, eyes wild. This is Jesus Christ." Eli grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. "Don't look. Keep moving." But she had looked. He saw it in her face, the pale shock giving way to something deeper. Guilt. Fear. When they finally forced themselves onward, she didn't speak for hours. By dusk, they made camp in a sheltered hollow. The fire snapped high, but no one ate. The smell of Kearns's body clung to them, stuck in their nostrils like smoke. Sarah sat apart, knees hugged to her chest, staring into the flames. Eli joined her quietly. "You did what you could," he said. Her eyes darted to him. "What?" "For Kearns, there was nothing we could have done." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "You don't know that. Maybe if we'd found him sooner. Maybe if we hadn't wasted time." "Sarah!" "No," her voice cracked. "I read the reports, Eli. You've lost people before. Aaron Bledsoe, 3 years ago, right near Hollow Creek. You were lead ranger on that search." Eli stiffened. "You never found him, did you?" she pressed. Her eyes burned with accusation. "So how many, Eli? How many have vanished while you just kept your mouth shut?" His chest tightened. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't remember every single face?" Cal stirred from across the fire, his voice low. "That's what it does. Turns you against each other. Makes you see blame where there ain't any." Sarah shot him a glare. "And what do you know? You sit out here with your ghost stories, letting people disappear while you play prophet." The old hunter's eyes narrowed, but he didn't answer. The argument hung heavy in the air. The fire popped. Beyond the circle of light, the forest pressed in. Then came the whisper. So faint at first, Eli thought it was the wind. But no, the sound was too clear. "Sarah!" Her head snapped up. "Sarah! Help me!" Her face went white. "That's Daniel. That's him." Eli grabbed her wrist. "It's not. Don't listen." But the voice came again, closer. "Sarah! Please! So cold." Her eyes filled with tears. "It's him. He needs me." Sarah, Eli barked. She ripped her arm free. You don't get to tell me who I hear. You've let enough people die already. She lurched toward the trees, but Cal blocked her path, rifle raised. You go out there. You don't come back. Her voice rose, breaking. Move! The forest answered before Cal could. A scream split the night, high, shrill, inhuman. Branches snapped. Something barreled against the edge of the firelight, so fast Eli barely caught a glimpse. Sarah shrieked and stumbled back as the firelight caught a flash of bone-white skin, blood still smeared across its mouth. The Wendigo. It lunged just close enough that the firelight lit its face, Daniel's face, or what looked like it. Half recognizable, skin stretched, eyes sunken, teeth too sharp. Sarah's scream turned into a sob. Daniel! Eli fired. The shot ripped the thing back into the dark. Snow exploded outward. The trees rattled. Then silence. Sarah collapsed to the ground, shaking. I saw him! I saw him! Eli lowered his rifle slowly, heart hammering. He wanted to tell her it wasn't Daniel, that it couldn't be. But in his gut, a deeper horror coiled, because part of him thought he'd seen it too. Chapter 7. Through the pines. The night didn't end. Eli lost track of time in the screaming wind, the fire's smoke, the hammering pulse in his ears. They sat huddled until the fire was nothing but coals, afraid to speak, afraid to move. Sarah's sobs had dwindled to ragged breaths, her eyes glassy and vacant. Cal finally broke the silence. We can't stay put. It's closing in tighter each night. If we don't move, it'll bleed us out. Eli stared at the glowing embers. His body screamed for rest, but Cal was right. The thing was toying with them, pushing them toward the edge. Staying meant waiting for it to finish the game. By dawn, they packed what little was left, Eli's rifle, Cal's shotgun, a dwindling bundle of firewood, Sarah's trembling hands gripping the hatchet she barely knew how to use. Snow fell thick, muffling the forest into silence. They walked. By midday, the forest stank. It was faint at first, then stronger, the coppery reek of blood carried by the wind. Eli lifted a hand to stop the others. Smell that? Cal's eyes narrowed. Yeah. Sarah shook her head quickly. I don't smell anything. But Eli did. And when they turned a corner in the trail, he wished he hadn't. The snow was painted crimson. At least 4 bodies lay shredded across the clearing. Hikers, judging by the bright nylon of their torn packs. Limbs twisted, torsos split open like butchered deer. One man's face was gone entirely, jaw and skull picked clean down to the bone. Another woman's hand was nailed to a tree, the rest of her body scattered like meat for wolves. Sarah's scream tore the air. She stumbled back, slipping in the red snow. Cal swore. Jesus Christ! Eli's stomach lurched, bile burning his throat. The gore was worse than Kern's, fresher, hungrier. He forced his eyes away, but the scene etched itself into his skull. Ribs cracked open, intestines stretched like rope, faces frozen in terror. Sarah backed into him, shaking. We need to go back. No, Cal snapped. Back's worse, always worse. The wind shifted, and the corpses moved. Not alive, not really, just twitching, limbs jerking like marionettes. One hiker's jaw worked open and shut, a wet gurgle escaping. Sarah shrieked, stumbling toward the trees. Don't look, Eli barked, dragging her back. But it was too late. She'd seen it. They all had. The Wendigo's laugh rattled the clearing, high and jagged, rolling through the trees like broken glass. Then the corpses fell still, And the chase began. It hit them like a storm. Branches cracked overhead, snow cascaded from trees as something massive barreled after them. Eli fired blind into the shadows, but the thing moved too fast, darting between trunks, circling, pushing them deeper into the pines. "Run!" Cal bellowed. They ran. The forest blurred into streaks of white and black, their breaths ragged clouds in the frozen air. Snow grabbed at Eli's boots, branches clawed his face. Behind them, the shrieks and laughs rose higher, always just at their heels. Something slammed into a tree just behind Sarah. Bark exploded. She screamed, stumbling, but Eli caught her arm and hauled her upright. "Move!" Cal fired his shotgun. The blast echoed like thunder. A screech followed, wounded, furious, but not dead. Never dead. They broke into a gully, snow waist deep. Eli shoved Sarah ahead, firing again over his shoulder. For a moment he saw it, half a glimpse, long limbs, antlers, face stretched into something almost human, but wrong, so wrong. Blood dripped from its teeth, steaming in the cold. Then it was gone again. By the time they clawed their way out of the gully, Sarah collapsed against a tree, sobbing. Her face was pale, her lips blue. We can't. It won't stop, Eli. It won't." Eli crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. You keep moving, or you're dead. You understand? You don't stop." Her eyes flicked past him, wide, terrified. "Eli," she whispered. He turned. It was standing 10 feet away. Tall, skeletal, skin stretched like parchment over bone. Its chest cavity gaped open, ribs jutting like jagged bars. Inside, something moved. A face, pressed against the ribs, straining against the bone. Daniel's face, mouth opening and closing, whispering, "Help me." Eli's blood ran cold. Sarah screamed and lunged toward it. "Daniel!" Eli grabbed her waist, dragging her back as the Wendigo shrieked, the sound splitting the air like shrapnel. It lurched forward, jaws wide, teeth gleaming with gore. Cal's shotgun boomed. The creature staggered, black ichor spraying across the snow. "Move!" Cal roared. They bolted again, deeper into the pines, leaving the echo of its laughter behind. By nightfall, they stumbled into a narrow ravine. Exhaustion hung heavy, but none of them spoke of stopping. The forest pressed too close, the shadows too thick. Sarah's eyes darted in every direction, lips moving soundlessly. Eli caught fragments. "Daniel. Cold. Not your fault." She wasn't talking to him. She wasn't even talking to herself. She was listening. And Eli knew the Wendigo was winning. Chapter 8. Echoes in the Timberline. The ravine was narrow, choked with twisted pines and snowdrifts that rose like frozen waves. Eli's lungs burned. Each step threatened to collapse his legs beneath him. Sarah stumbled beside him, eyes wild, clutching the hatchet like a lifeline. Cal was just ahead, moving with the deliberate, unhurried pace of a man who had lived through things that could break ordinary people. And behind them, it followed. The Wendigo's laughter, bone-piercing and high, echoed through the canyon. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a cruel distortion of sound that made the world tilt. Eli's stomach churned as he realized the snow behind them was black with blood. The last of the deer, the rabbits, the small animals. They were nothing. Its hunger was never sated. They reached a fallen log that spanned the width of the ravine. Cal stopped, turning. "This is it. We make a stand." Sarah shook her head violently. "I can't." "You don't get a choice," Cal snapped. "We hold it here, or it hunts us till we die." Eli nodded, shouldering his rifle. The fire from the stormless sun cast long shadows. Their breaths puffed white, but all warmth felt stolen. The first attack came just as the snow began to darken. A blur of gray leapt from the trees. Its elongated limbs struck like hammers. Cal's shotgun thundered. Snow and blood sprayed. The creature shrieked, staggering back. Eli fired, twice. The creature's head snapped, then it lunged again, faster this time. Sarah screamed, swinging the hatchet blindly. Her blade caught it along one arm. Something snapped, a wet, sickening crack. The Wendigo shrieked again, spinning toward her, jaws gaping, teeth glistening with black gore. Eli's rifle bucked, the shots ripping through the cold air. Each strike staggered the thing, but never stopped it. It was relentless. Hunger drove it. Cal lunged, tackling the Wendigo as it came for Eli. The hunter's strength held for a moment, but the creature's teeth sank into his shoulder. He cursed, slamming the butt of his shotgun against its skull. Blood sprayed. The sound made Sarah gag. Eli grabbed a fallen branch, yanking it down with every ounce of strength. The Wendigo shrieked, staggering back, retreating just enough for him to see the face pressed against its chest, the faintly recognizable features of Daniel Kearns, twisted into a mask of agony. "Get back!" Eli shouted, pulling Sarah toward the ravine exit. But it was too smart. It circled, anticipating, stalking. Every step forward was met with an invisible barrier of terror. Then Sarah did something unexpected. "You want him," she shouted. "Fine!" She charged, hatchet raised, screaming like a madwoman. The creature hesitated. Hunger and curiosity clashed in its glowing red eyes. And in that instant, Eli saw his opening. He fired point blank. The rifle's report tore through the hollow. The Wendigo's head snapped back, screeching, twisting. Sarah swung her hatchet again, burying it into its temple. It collapsed, twitching violently. Limbs flailed, snapping branches, cracking bones. Snow and ichor sprayed into the air. Eli ran, pulling Sarah along. Cal stumbled behind them, blood slicking his coat. "Go!" he shouted. The creature made one last, keening howl, a sound that would haunt their dreams forever, then collapsed into the snow, motionless. They reached the edge of the timberline as night fell. The sky was bruised purple, the air bitter and thin. Cal slumped to his knees. I'm done for," he muttered, looking down at the wound on his shoulder. Blood had soaked through the coat. Eli and Sarah knelt beside him, trying to stem the bleeding. "We need to get you out," Eli said. Cal shook his head. "No, you two, just get out. Tell them, what's out here?" His eyes closed. Eli felt a bitter twist in his chest as the old hunter slipped into silence. Snow drifted over the clearing, covering tracks, bones, and gore alike. The forest exhaled around them. Eli and Sarah didn't stop moving until the park boundary came into view, lights from the ranger station winking through the trees like a fragile promise of life. Both were bleeding, bruised, exhausted beyond measure. Sarah leaned heavily on Eli, whispering, It's over." Eli shook his head. For now. Because even in the bright lights of safety, the timberline waited, and the echoes of the hunger, the shrieks, and the faces pressed against the Wendigo's chest lingered in his mind like smoke. Somewhere in the forest, the hunger remained, and Eli knew with every bone-deep instinct that it would return.